Today we're going to make a combination of spelt and einkorn sourdough bread. First thing I'm going to do is feed my starter. I got this starter from Jason, our neighbor. Her name... This is my starter. This has been kept in the fridge. I have been feeding it whenever I need to make sourdough. I feed it in the morning and let it rise until it's at least double in bulk and has started to drop a little bit. So I got this from, as I said, I got this from Jason, and her name is Eileen. She's been very, very good to me, baking good sourdough. So I'm going to feed it. I'm not sure how much I have in here, but what I do is add 100 mils of warm filtered water, and I've pre-measured my rye flour to feed it. Rye flour is like a steroid for starter. It just makes it really grow fast. So I've got 100 grams of rye flour that I'm going to add to my starter. There you go. Then I have this handy dandy little thing. I'm not sure what it's called, but it really mixes the starter, the combination that you've added. So you mix it, I mix it and mix until it's a really good consistency. Now I've noticed that when I use bread flour, that my starter is a little thinner, a little more, not as dense as when I use rye flour, but that's okay. When I'm using the rye flour, I want a fairly dense starter so that it doesn't fall. Some people call what I'm doing is making a levain. I just call it a starter. And I don't make a separate starter. I don't ever discard. I've never discarded my starter. I use it in my breads. So I mix it really, really well until it's of a good consistency. So you can see that it's really well mixed. So it's really well mixed, but it's really thick. So now I have to scrape all my mix off. I found too that it's really important to rinse this machine or whatever, this little tool, really quickly, because if it sets, it's really hard to get it clean if I don't do it right away. So there I fed my starter. Scrape it down. And I mark with a piece of electrical tape where I'm starting. So when the starter has risen to about here and has started, and it generally forms a little bit of a dome. When the dome starts to drop, then your starter is really ready. It's at its peak performance opportunities. So I'm going to cover it with a little bit of saran wrap. Gently close this. I don't tighten it because it needs to have some air escaping. Then I'm going to leave it on my counter here and let it rise probably a good 5 hours before it's ready to use in the next step. But what I'm going to do in the meantime, I have, this is organic red fife that we have milled here in our house. I'm not going to be using any of that today. I'm just keeping it in the fridge. What I will be using today is Organic Einkorn. It's really hard to find this stuff. And this is Organic Spelt. The Organic Spelt is grown in Canada. It's a product of Canada. And the einkorn, this particular einkorn, comes from the US. We have fortunately been able to find a grower provider here who will give us some einkorn that is grown here in Saskatchewan, as well as the spelt. So what I'm going to do is move to milling. What I need to measure out is use my little scale here to measure out how much I need to mill. Here's my little scale. So I start at 0 grams. And I'm going to use all of my einkorn because it's one of David's favorites. And what I need is 860 grams of flour. So here I have 296. I'm going to top it off with the spelt. And this is going to be straight spelt and einkorn sourdough. 296. 860 is what I need. It takes a lot. Ooh, it's going to take almost my whole bag. Come on, give me enough. Oh, I need to take some out of there. I'm not sure how accurate this little scale is, but it seems to do the trick. So I have 860 grams of wheat that I'm going to take to my new mill here. This is a Mock Mill 200 that we got, just a few weeks ago, and it grinds super, super fine flour. It's beautiful. So I put my grain in here. I have to start the machine first. And I put my grain in there. So here are 860 grams of freshly milled einkorn and spelt flour. Look at how fine that is. It's just so fine. And all of the nutrients are in there. Traditionally, I started making sourdough with straight white bread flour, and it was really good. It turned out perfectly. But then moved on to whole wheat, and now we're experimenting with organic ancient grains. So we're not sure how this is going to turn out, but we'll see. I did make one loaf of straight einkorn. It was heavy, but it was delicious. The flavor was amazing. So we're going to see how this turns out in the next probably
You made 5 grain too.
Oh, I also made 5 grain. I made a combination, 20% bread flour, 20% rye, 20% spelt, 20% red fife, and 20% einkorn. It was really good too. But I'm trying to get something that's a little bit lighter with a lighter crust, a little bit more perfect. So we'll see how this turns out. See you later. So now on to the next step. You see my starter has more than doubled in size, and the dome has dropped, so it's perfect timing for it. I have measured 580 milliliters of water, warm water, in my bowl, and I'm going to weigh out 260 grams of starter, and you'll see when it drops. If it floats, it means it's super ready. All right. Oh, it's too heavy to sing. It's too much. There, that's 191. This should almost do it. Do this. That is 256. I'm going to put a little bit more in. after I finish mixing up the dough, I'm going to feed the starter again. Whoops, whoops. It's a little more. Oh well, it won't hurt it. So I've got that. Remember how I told you I had to rinse this off? Well, I didn't. And boy, I had to work at cleaning it because all the dough had dried on it. So now that I've measured that, I'm just going to stir this up so that it's incorporated into the water. Break it up. So that it can start working once the flour is in it. I have 15 grams of salt that I will add, and my flour that we milled, freshly milled flour. So I'm going to add that. Now they say to add the salt later, but I've never done that. I just add it at the same time as I add the flour. And mix until all of the flour is incorporated. This is going to be very different from regular white bread sourdough because it doesn't have as much, it's not going to have as much gluten in it. These are not as high in gluten, these flours are not as high in gluten content as the white flour, which is generally made with hard spring wheat. These are ancient grains, so let's see how it turns out. So I have that like that. It's pretty sticky, which is the way it's supposed to be. See, it's pretty sticky. So now what I have to do is cover that with plastic and let it rest for 15-20 minutes. And then I have to, in traditional sourdough, you stretch and fold. With this, you don't stretch and fold because the gluten fibers are not nearly as strong, and so it's a different process. But I'll show you that next step. So it's been about 15-20 minutes since we mixed up the dough. I've sprinkled a little bit of flour on my countertop, and I'm using organic red fife that we milled here in our little mill. I'm going to turn this dough out onto the counter. It's pretty sticky. Unlike regular sourdough that you would make with a regular bread flour, I've only waited about 20 minutes before I do some folding, and I'm not going to stretch. As I mentioned earlier, the gluten fibers are fairly delicate in this flour. So I've got this here. Now I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on the top, and I'm going to pat it into a rectangle. Trying not to get too much flour in there. And so I've got my handy scraper here. I'm going to fold it in half like that. Now I'm going to do this side, fold it, so we have it like that, and then fold this like this, and then the final fold like this. And we should be able to see the layers. You don't want to pinch it down like you would in normal sourdough. You want to be able to see the different layers of the folds. And then I pick the whole thing up with my scraper and put it back in my bowl and cover it with my handy dandy shower caps from the dollar store. And let it sit for another 15, 20 minutes, where I will do another set of folds. I'm going to do 2 more sets of folds before I do my bulk fermentation. So for now, we're just going to let that sit. So I folded my dough 2 more times, and it's been bulk rising now for about 3 hours. And you can see it's not quite doubled in size, which is good. And you can see it's, you know, it's nice. So now I'm going to shape it. I think I will need a little bit of, I'll use some of this. This is rice flour. I've got my proofing baskets ready. I line them with, I use a liner in them so that the dough doesn't stick, because the first time I used them, the dough did stick. So I now use a liner, and I sprinkle a little bit of rice flour in there because the rice flour doesn't burn and it keeps it from sticking. So I'm going to drop my dough onto the counter. And there I'm going to cut it in half, and then I will shape it. I will not stretch and fold. I won't stretch it. I will just fold it and then make it into a nice round pool to go into my baskets. I've decided that for one of these, I'm going to drop it in some flakes of oats so that the top will be nice and covered with oat flakes when it comes out baked. It should be really good. There's my dough. It's heavy dough, but it is straight einkorn and spelt. So I'm going to cut it in half using my handy dandy scraper. And I'm going to move this piece off to the side here. And this one I'm going to flatten into a rectangle. And then I'm going to fold it. Again, I'm using my scraper to help me because it is fairly sticky. Do the other side over and half. And then the other half. And now I have to give it some tension, to give it some surface tension, I'm going to do this as much as possible, just to give it some tension. You can see it's already starting to look stronger on the top than this, and that's what we do with it, surface tension. And that will help it retain its shape and hold the gluten in, I think. I'm not sure. So I have this nice round ball. I'm going to roll it in here. Look at that. Doesn't that look nice? Then I drop, oh, come on, get off my hand. Drop it in there and straighten it out a little bit. Then I will cover that with one of my, should I do both of these with oatmeal? I'm thinking maybe. There, got some little oats in there. Flip it because this side isn't sticky. So fold, fold, and I don't, you notice I'm not tucking it in like I would in regular, again, roll it on the top to make a nice round. Give it some tension. You can see it's building tension. Look at that, it's not sticky there. It's because it's, I think I'm going to do both with oatmeal. And in you go. There. Now I'm going to put those in the fridge overnight, and tomorrow morning when I get up, I'll take them out. So they'll be in the fridge from 7:30 till probably about 8 tomorrow morning. Then I'll take them out. So that's almost, that's 12 hours. So I'll take them out, and that's called the cold ferment, and then I'll bake them, score them and bake them. There you go. I don't know, I hope they turn out. I'm hoping they'll turn out. But look at there, jiggly. They're jiggly. That's good. Oh, good morning. We're ready to see what this bread has done. I've taken it out of the fridge, got my oven preheated to 425, and now we'll see what's going to happen. I'm going to take them out, score them, and I'm anxious to see what that oatmeal will look like. I've got my parchment paper and my handy dandy little, I don't know what they're called, grabbers. Oh, look at that. It's beautiful. Ah. Now, the score. Should I make it? No, I'm just going to do one like that, and another one over here. I read that you're not supposed to score very deep with Einkorn and Spelt. Now, I get my pot out of the oven. This is really hot. I don't know. Hope it springs. There we go. Cover that up. Put it back in the oven. And do the second one. Oof. Bread. I'm going to score this one right down the middle too. Ooh, that oatmeal's kind of hard to get through. There we go. Get my other. This is just an old Pyrex casserole that Sky's Auntie Linda gave to me. That's what I use for that. There we go. Voila, done. So now we're going to set the timer for 20 minutes and see what happens after 20 minutes. See you.
Good.
Hi, I've set my timer for 20 minutes for the first bake before with the lid on, but I'm going to check it after about 5 minutes to see if it's springing and if it needs a second score. Sometimes the second score will help with the spring. So I'm just going to check. I think I will score it again. Oh, ouch. Just there we go. That one's done. Oh, it's so hot. The second one. It's too hot. There. There we go. There we go. There's. Okay, time to take this bread out. Let's see what we've got. Here's the first loaf. Einkorn Spelt. Gonna be a healthy, heavy, rustic bread. Here's the second loaf. Fill you up. You won't be hungry after eating this. This beside it here is a loaf of bread, sourdough made with regular bread flour. And you can see that it's quite a bit lighter. It's got lots of nice spring to it. This is going to be heavy. I'm sure it'll taste great, but maybe I just need to add a little bit of bread flour to it so that it will rise more, form more gluten, because this is going to be heavy. Can't wait to try it though. I'm sure it'll taste yummy.